like to meet you. They would. They'd like to meet you. Hello, BookTube. And welcome to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. I made a whole wall of penguins in the time that I've been on BookTube. Before that, certain penguins were grouped with certain other penguins, but not a whole wall. That idea came to me once I was looking at them on a camera, which is still a kind of a weird thing for me. And we're not arranging things. I'm not arranging things in any kind of syllabus or any kind of order of any kind. Although the books themselves tend to arrange that way. Sometimes I'll have a little mania of organization, and I don't know when we'll next hit a thread like that. I think it's probably miscellaneous for a while now. And our book today is a delight, an absolute delight. This is Boswell's London Journal. This is James Boswell. We've already met him on this Penguin Classic tour because he's the author of The Life of Dr. Samuel Johnson. An enormous thing. This is not nearly as big. But Boswell was a lifelong writer for publication and also privately. He couldn't stop. He wrote all the time. And he kept a journal of the year that he was in London, and it's amazing reading. Absolutely amazing. Because like the Diary of Samuel Pepys, it's so weirdly unself-conscious at so many different points. This is a chronicle of his roistering and his womanizing, but also all of the friends that he made and the titanic amounts of drinking that he did and how disappointed he was with himself for the titanic amounts of drinking that he did and all of his vows to do better. And a more self-conscious writer would realize what the end effect of all this is, of reading all this. Just like with Pepys, if you write over and over again about how you're trying to do better and completely failing, it's not something that purports with the public attitude of a public man in the 18th century. It's very much in tune with our own century, confessional time period, where it's just expected that in our world there's much less of a dividing line between the private and the public life, if there's a private life at all anymore. So that if a politician wants to send incredibly self-damaging pictures to someone unsolicited, he has to do it over a public means, a hackable public means. Whereas in Boswell's day, there was much more an idea of a public face. And this sort of thing blows that out of the water, which makes it all the more adorable. He is so much fun to spend time with, because when he's writing a warts and all portrait of himself, he knows that it's warts and all, and that somehow forgives, that somehow makes a difference. And this is, as a result, just a fantastic minor classic of English letters. I'm not sure why this isn't as popular as Pepys's diary, but I love it almost the same. And a lot of you will know this book, but you won't know this Penguin Classic. You'll know this thing from 1950. This is Frederick Pottle's edition of the London Journal of Boswell, and it, in this hardcover and in the paperback that came out, it sold like crazy, absolutely like crazy, so that to such a degree that it's not terrifically hard to find a copy of this old Pottle version. Pottle made a lifelong career out of James Boswell. It's not hard to find a copy of this in a used bookstore, in paperback or in hardcover. And this is edited by Gordon Turnbull, who admits in his introduction that what he's doing is updating Pottle. And he admits in his introduction that that's an incredibly intimidating task, because the Pottle Boswell was for an entire generation the definitive edition of Boswell, not just the London Journal. Pottle did everything. He did 20 volumes on Boswell, and they're all interesting for aficionados of the time period. I myself think they have diminishing returns. They get more and more pickety, more and more scholarly as they go along. The London Journal is alive with personalities and long, well-considered vignettes. So it is exempt from Pottle volumes like Boswell in Search of Hawaii, or Boswell at the Bar, or anything like that. And Turnbull says for this edition that what he is doing is updating any mistakes that Pottle made and also elaborating on stuff that Pottle just passes over in silence. And that makes this volume interesting. It makes it, if you're a Boswell fan as I am, it makes it invaluable. You have to have this as well as the other one. Nothing's going to dislodge this in my affections, but that makes this all the more interesting to me, and it should have been the next book after Boswell's Life of Johnson in this Penguin Tour if I put it where it belongs. So maybe I'll do that when we're done. And this is just broken up day by day. On one day, the segments are mostly broken up with Boswell's jottings to himself before the day begins in his journal. Here are the things I have to do. Here's my list of my reminders. Here is my list of things to do. And also admonitions to himself that he sprinkles liberally in between those things to do, and that he's always doing. In this and in every other journal, and everything that he writes, he's always admonishing himself to do better. Like, for instance, at one thing here, what does he say? Be on your guard, serious from this day, and behave with propriety. Resolve, read much, and attain self-command, and you'll do well. Now try in good earnest. Those are all things written to himself. But we have an entry here. Let me read, just to give you a feel of it, just a bit of a feel of it. Let's see here. Temple and I came up by water from the Temple stairs to Whitehall. This is from Monday, 13 June of 1763. Temple and I came up by water from the Temple stairs to Whitehall. This is the first time this season that I have been upon the silver Thames. It is very pleasant to sail upon, and I shall do it oftener. We drank tea cordially at my lodgings, and my friend gave me much good advice. At night, Lord Eglantine and Bob Temple called in my lord's coach and carried us to Vauxhall, which was quite delicious. There was a quarrel between a gentleman and a waiter. A great crowd gathered round, roared out, a ring, which is the signal for making room for the parties to box it out. At last the constable came to quell the riot. I seized his baton in a good-humored way which made him laugh, and I rapped on the people's heads, bawling out, "Who will resist the peace? A ring, a ring!" However, all would not do. My lord brought us home in his coach, and Temple supped with me on a slight repast. So it's a little vignette, totally here and then gone, where Boswell lampoons the officer by pretending that he has come to demand that a ring be made for boxing, instead of that he demand that the crowd break up. We're not going to have a boxing match right here in the middle of Vauxhall. And the next day, on the 14th of June, he starts off by saying, I should have mentioned yesterday that I waited on Mr. Johnson, who was very civil to me. He said that such a man as Johnson, the rioter, should be encouraged, and his performance should show the extent of the human powers in one instance, so tended to raise our opinion of the nature of man, and that he showed the great effect of industry and application. So, not only is that little moment interesting, where you see Boswell having fun with the constable and with the crowd, and you get a sense of the sort of thing that could happen and what the crowd's reaction to it would be, stuff that it's totally left out of airbrushed histories, even at this period. But you also see something else. You see something else about Boswell. Now, he starts off the day by admonishing himself to read more, to be patient, to act civilly and in an adult manner, and then you'll control yourself and you'll do just fine, because he's worried that he won't. He's worried that he won't do that. And that shows a degree of self-consciousness that is belied by the next day's entry, which tells us that when Boswell sat down to write up the 13th of June, he remembered the incident with the constable and forgot that he talked with Samuel Johnson. That's fascinating. That's just fascinating that he wouldn't remember, and that he wouldn't remember to put it in there as the highlight of the day, but also that he would be honest enough not to go back and remake the entry, to remember, to make Johnson the highlight instead of some meaningless bit of fun. You get that all throughout here. I don't know quite how to recommend Boswell's London Journal. It is great, great fun to read. And I believe that it's great fun to read even if you don't particularly consult all of the notes in question. But if you want to, you can, because this edition and the Pottle edition both come replete with notes so that you can have things explained to you. I never know quite whether or not to recommend it, because to some extent Boswell didn't intend you to read it. and that, I mean, not to complete extent. Nothing that he wrote was truly private. But even so, I think it's fascinating. I think you would find it fascinating. It might take a little bit of time to acclimate to it, but after that, read a little bit now and again until it feels familiar to you, and then you'll want more. I'm not sure that you'll want more enough to go chasing after all those Pottle volumes. I'm not sure that you will. I'm not sure that anyone likes Boswell well enough to do that. I think by the time that series ended, even the most well-intentioned critics were starting to get a little tired of it, and I was starting to get a little tired of it, even though I was aware at the time of the incredible historical significance of those volumes, just clearing the groundwork with all of this material, a lot of it which had never seen the light of day before. So we owe Frederick Pottle a vote of thanks. but this Turnbull edition is updated. It's more complete. So that's my explanation for why I have 2 copies of this same obscure thing. But I do recommend that you give it a try. I'm sure that Boswell's London Journal is available for free online. You could try it then and see if it strikes your fancy. And that's your penguin for today. Now, will we stay in Johnson's orbit tomorrow? I don't know. We shall see. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.